We're going to examine some options you might use if you have a small blocker at the net and devising a blocking system that will keep them on the court and still allow your defense to be effective. So often, especially in the setting position, or you might have a good all-around player where their strength is not blocking, but they contribute in other ways. You know, obviously the setter is running your offense, or you have a outside hitter that passes and defends. But how can we devise a system that will allow them to be at the net blocking and be effective? And you also just may be a team that doesn't have 3 tall blockers, and you have to be creative with what you do with your blocking system. A couple concepts. One is we'd rather have no block than a bad block. So if your small player can't get their hands over the net, you'd probably be better served to have them play some form of defense behind the block or in the back row. A small blocker doesn't automatically equate to a bad blocker. So if I can get my hands over the net and I line up well with the attacker and take out some area, we can defend behind that type of block. Statistically, most of the sets go to left front. And also, when a left front player is attacking, their highest point of contact is going to be at the antenna down the line. So that might impact where you put your small blocker. So we'll explore that. So we'll put up our court. And the first thing we're going to examine is if we put our small blocker right side, what options might be available. We're going to have a perimeter defense. And we're going to dig over the top of that small blocker. So if we have our, let's get rid of this. If we have our small blocker, or right back player, playing deep behind the block, and normally the keys for center back is ball between the 2 blockers. But since we have a small blocker here, we're going to move this person to the right. So now, in essence, we have 2 people digging over the top of the small block. Left back keys are, in essence, the same inside the middle blocker, and then we can do some different things with our left front, and we'll talk about that here in a second. So we've slid our middle back over. So in essence, we have this type of coverage going on over the top of this small blocker. Our left back player has got to have some range, got a little bit more room to cover back here. And our left front player, since most players can't hit that shot hard, we're going to kind of slide her in a little bit more to the middle of the court to protect this area behind the block where an attacker could tip into. And this person also has to be able to read a tip and react accordingly. So we're digging over the top of the small block, and then we're doing the best we can to defend this cross-court area. So this might be an option in terms of how you arrange your defense behind the small block. If we put our small blocker in the middle, and again, I think this is a viable option because most attackers, when they bring the ball cross court, they tend to bring it down to the tape. So if I can just get my hands over the net, I can touch a lot of balls. Our concepts are going to be the same in terms of we have a perimeter defense, and again, normal keys are ball between the blockers for our middle back, but we're going to break that, and we're going to move them this way and have her dig a little bit more over the top of the small block. Our left back keys are the same, and our drop-off defender's keys can be the same. Depends how you want to arrange your defense. So again, in essence, we're digging these shots over the top of the block. If we block the line, we can move this person up for tips and drop this person wider. If we don't necessarily block the line, then this person can range back in here depending on what they see behind the block. And again, maybe this person can move in a little bit shallower to protect the area behind the court for tips. So this is what we do if we put the blocker in the middle of the court. Now, a disadvantage for this is a lot of times your smaller blockers, if they start here, they're smaller in stature, they got to work really hard to get to the outside, but certainly that's something that is they're capable of doing. We can also put our small blocker on the left side, and we do that for a couple reasons. One is it allows us to put 2 bigger blockers on the area of the court where most attacks are going to go, the opponent's left front. The percentages of back sets is probably quite a bit smaller, so you're kind of hiding your blocker a little bit. And if this small block is also a setter, we'll talk about some of the options we have. So we'll put our normal perimeter defense here, and since we have a little bit bigger block, our keys can be the same. Ball between the two blockers for center back. We got here in terms of digging inside the block and then down the line. If this is an outside hitter, we just kind of drop and defend as we normally would in a perimeter defense. If this is our setter, we probably want to slide them behind the block. They can cover tips, and then if we dig the ball in the backcourt, they can kind of navigate their offense from, where they normally start their offense in terms of the kind of the right side of the court. So this might be an option if you have a setter who's a small blocker. You kind of take them away from where a lot of the attacks are going to go. If we have our small blocker in the middle and there's a middle attack, we want to construct our defense or possibly construct our defense this way. If our blocker is capable of blocking and we've got this going on, we want to have our bigger blockers that are right front, left front start pinched in so they can get out here if the ball's set there to the left front, or they can also move in to help if the ball is set in the middle of the court. So they start pinched. If our blocker is small and we don't want them blocking, they can just drop off, and then these two bigger blockers can pinch in and block the middle attack. So again, there's options whether your blocker's in the middle or on the right or left side, depending upon where you want to place them. So as a wrap-up, we'll get rid of our court here. We want to emphasize, don't feel that just because somebody's a small block, they have to come off the net. You can put them at the net. If they're capable of taking up some space, put them at the net, and then construct your defense behind them that will effectively cover the court. What you as a coach has to do is weigh the pluses and minuses in terms of where I put them along the net, or if they have them block at all. And then as you play in your defense, for example, if I put my small blocker on the right side and they're blocking against a taller outside hitter, be realistic. Sometimes they're going to struggle and they're not going to be an effective blocker. But hopefully the plus side of that is they're on the court, they can run your offense, or if they're an outside hitter, they're passing and defending and they have a good court spirit. So it's all pluses and minuses, and sometimes you have to be willing to take the minuses, a small block that might get used occasionally, but it's offset by the number of pluses that player brings to the court. So hopefully this gives you some options in terms of what you can do defensively if you have a small blocker at the net.